Greetings internets, it is I, Musashi X, and welcome to my very first retrospective video, giving you details of a specific game series, as well as sharing my experiences to the wonderful World Wide Web. And what better way to start off this retrospective video than the one fighting game series that dominated the 3D fighting game genre. I'm of course talking about Tekken. Now before I go on with this video, I would like to give out my apologies for taking too long with this video. If only because a few weeks back I had Anime Expo to deal with, then I had a long work schedule, and then this past weekend I also had Delta H-Con to deal with as well. And of course, another long busy work week. So thank you so much for your patience. Now in this video, there will be some Tekken games that I will not talk about in this video. Such examples is that I will not be talking about Tekken Advance, I will not be talking about Death by Degrees, and I will not talk so much about Tekken Revolution, if only because it's basically a free-to-play Tekken with microtransactions involved. And finally, the game that is playing behind me, Tekken 7, I will actually save that for a future review video, so I will not include that in today's retrospective. So yeah, let's go step inside the ring. Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament.
Get ready for the next battle.
The third and fourth generation era of gaming was such a great time to be a gamer, as during those years, I'd be exposed to a near endless supply of fighting games, starting with the popularity of Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat, with myself playing the latter at the time. It's amazing to see great martial arts moves, seeing projectiles flying left and right, and the amount of beatdown you want to give to your opponents. 2D fighting brings great times for many, but in 1993, a new legend is born. We were then introduced to the very first Virtua Fighter, regarded as the first 3D fighting game, made by Sega's AM2 division, once headed by its founder, the legendary Yu Suzuki, best known for the arcade smash hit Outrun and what's considered to be the most expensive game series, Shenmue. I'm using footage from Virtua Fighter Remix for better textures on the character models. 3D fighters are very common now in this generation, but for its time, it was very revolutionary, the likes we've yet to see. 3D models and a semi-realistic gameplay that's all about timing your moves and when to defend yourself, all while fighting in a very open area. While it's now archaic in design, it's still an important piece of gaming history, so much so that the cabinet is actually displayed in a Smithsonian museum. Virtua Fighter jump-started the 3D fighting genre that other companies will try to capitalize on its success. Mainly Bandai Namco, though they're just Namco at the time before their merger, as well as two men involved. Director Seiichi Ishii, whose photo is really hard to come by, and project producer Katsuhiro Harada. They would create what would become Virtua Fighter's main rival, Tekken, meaning Iron Fist in Japanese. This hit the arcades in 1994 and then got a port for the PS1 the following year.
Now this is mainly a retrospective video. What Virtua Fighter started, Tekken would soon dominate, though I will go through the mechanics of each game as the series progresses. Now I'm going to talk about these games in a more casual way. And while I'm not exactly a competitive gamer, even though I actually grew up on playing these games, I will also share my experiences with the whole series as it evolves with each subsequent installment.
Like Virtua Fighter, the character models are mostly polygons, but Tekken would be some steps ahead of Virtua Fighter by actually having gameplay that clocks in at 60 frames per second, but the moon jumps from its rivals still applies. Instead of Virtua Fighter's punch, kick, and guard scheme, Tekken utilizes a 4-button scheme where each button is assigned to a specific limb on the character, making attacks feel natural to the player, and by combining buttons allow for special techniques or complex throws and holds for grapple-type characters. Also in Tekken, each character has a 10-hit combo string that if input correctly, you can end a match easily. However, given that this is an early 3D fighter, most of the time, you'll find yourself having input lag and you'll stop your combo almost immediately even when it seems that things are going your way. In Virtua Fighter, you can win a match either by depleting your opponent's HP, or you can knock your opponent out of the ring regardless of how much HP your opponent has left. While in Tekken, it's just straight up depleting your HP of your opponent, and the stages go on indefinitely as there's no walls at all. So there's no way for you to win a match via ring out, as there is no such thing in Tekken. Despite the input lags, the PS1 version is very faithful to the arcade with an arranged soundtrack, better replay value by unlocking more characters to play in the game, since the mid-bosses are unplayable in the arcades, and as an added bonus, because Namco takes pride in their games, they added a bonus game of Galaga whenever you boot up the game. Also, for its time, makes great use of full motion video for the intro and endings of each character. And yes, unlike Virtua Fighter, Tekken actually has a plot and the overall story would become even darker as the series progresses. A power-driven madman named Heihachi Mishima owns a corporation called the Mishima Saibatsu and hosts a tournament called the King of Iron Fist Tournament. 15 fighters gathered to fight to earn $1 billion in cash, and among those is Heihachi's son, Kazuya, who was thrown off a cliff by his father when he was 5 years old, and did so to see if he's able to climb back up. Only then would he acknowledge Kazuya as his son, but that only fueled his desire to kill him in retaliation when he sees a spirit that he made a pact with to gain strength to win. Sure enough, Kazuya would defeat Heihachi and throw him off the very same cliff without any remorse.
And then comes Tekken 2, which, to be honest, that's actually the very first game in the series that I actually ever owned. And unlike Tekken 1, there are some numerous improvements over the last game that I will also be talking about in this video.
More detailed characters, both in-game and rendered, an increasing number of moves, better techniques to juggle your opponents without giving a chance to breathe, and extra modes to play such as survival and time attack. Also new to the game is auto-guarding. Unlike the first game where you have to hold back to block, in Tekken 2 and onwards, there's no need to hold the back button to guard, but you still have to be aware of throws as they can cause serious damage. As far as the plot goes, Kazuya is now the villain and has a deadly form called Devil. He takes over the Mishima Saibatsu for world domination, and Heihachi survives the fall and proceeds to stop Kazuya. A new face in town, Jun Kazuma, is willing to stop Kazuya, but was drawn into Devil's power, causing her to be pregnant with Kazuya's child. During the tournament, Kazuya and Heihachi are butting heads, and with Heihachi gaining the upper hand, the Devil takes over Kazuya and transformed at full power. However, due to Jun's interference, Heihachi defeated Kazuya and proceeds to throw him into a volcano, thereby reclaiming the Mishima Saibatsu. Which then leads us to Tekken 3, set 15 years after the last game, and most of the veteran characters like Paul and Lei show age. This time you can finally sidestep, allowing for a more strategic approach while avoiding enemy attacks. Also, no more moon jumping, which is a real plus. and the game even moves faster than the past games. Because of the 15-year time skip, we also have fresh new faces in the tournament, such as new protagonists Jin Kazama, Kazuya and Jun's son, Ling Xiaoyu, granddaughter of Kung Fu expert Wang Jinrei, Julia Chang, Michelle's adoptive daughter, or two fan favorites, Taekwondo expert Huarang and Capoeira master Eddie Gordo. Visually speaking, the stages are more colorful than the past two games, and the music is more upbeat to listen to, especially Jin's theme. For the time, I consider this as my favorite Tekken game, better than 2, with its diverse cast and easy to pull off combos, and in addition to the returning modes from Tekken 2, 2 more modes are introduced. The first being Tekken Ball, which is beach volleyball with Tekken fighting. Yep, in my opinion, this game did it first, Koei Tecmo. The second is a 2D beat-em-up mode called Tekken Force. Think of it more as Streets of Rage with Tekken controls, and the controls are not that bad once you get used to it. And it's in this mode that you unlock a character named Dr. Geppetto Boskonovich, or Dr. B for short. That is when you defeat this mode 4 times. And yeah, while the character is important plot-wise, his fighting style is anything but good. And the same can be said for the Dinosaur Gon, a licensed character that you can only unlock upon defeating him in Ball mode. Speaking of the plot, after regaining the Mishima Zaibatsu from Kazuya, Heihachi proceeds to form the Tekken Force to ensure peace. But in actuality, he is seeking a means to immortality after hearing about a being called the God of Fighting called Ogre, and seeks to obtain its DNA for power. Elsewhere, Jun Kazama's 18-year-old son needed help from Heihachi to seek out Ogre, rumored to have killed Jun. Of course, Jin does kill Ogre, but ends up being betrayed by Heihachi himself by feeding him with bullets. But Jin didn't stay dead for very long, as the devil gene inside him suddenly activated, and starts attacking everyone in sight before flying off. With 3 games under their belt, Namco decided that before the production of Tekken 4, they would experiment with Tekken 3's engine further and have dream matches with all of the available characters so far, and add in tag team elements after seeing the success of X-Men vs Street Fighter. That resulted in the 1999 arcade release of Tekken Tag Tournament, with the PS2 release the following year. The game uses a refined Tekken 3 engine, and you can fight with 2 chosen characters at a time. All the characters from the first 3 games are accounted for, save for Gon because he is a licensed character from another media, and Dr. Boskonovich as his fighting style is not good for this game, and instead relegated to a background character in a mode that I'll get into later. With the new tag mechanics, Tekken Tag is fast-paced with more moves to perform and juggle your opponents, and it's fun to counter your opponents by performing a counter throw that would follow up by your partner jumping in for the attack. Keep in mind that unlike Capcom's fighters, the first fighter to go down ends the round and you move on to the next round. So don't get too overconfident and just tag someone else to save yourself from defeat. Unlike past games, the endings of all the characters, save for Unknown, are not CG and they're actually rather boring. When you don't feel like entering the ring, you can always go bowling. I will say that Tekken Bowl is a really fun mode. It's what it sounds like, aligning your character for a good aim, and hope that you make a strike if you're skilled enough. Personally, I've yet to score a perfect run in this mode, but it is a worthy distraction nonetheless, and you can see Dr. Boskonovich in the background. I certainly enjoyed this game when I first got my PS2 from my folks, and played through it when during those times, I could only rent games due to my age not suited for employment at the time, so there's no way I don't have that much of an income to actually buy any games. The game eventually got re-released on the PS3 as part of the Tekken Hybrid Pack, sporting an HD remastering. After that, Tekken 4 comes out in 2001 for the arcades and PS2 the following year, continuing the plot from Tekken 3. It starts out with a Tekken 3 throwback of Heihachi throwing Kazuya's body into a volcano. Although 20 years later, Kazuya, now being one with the devil, was revived by a biotech firm called G Corporation, a name that we'll be hearing throughout the series starting with this game. It seems that by sheer coincidence, a group of G Corporation excavators were doing some exploring until they came upon Kazuya's body and decided to bring him back before the volcano fully erupted. However, after Kazuya was revived, the Mishima Zaibatsu started attacking G Corporation. To Heihachi's surprise, Kazuya was able to defeat them. Not content with what transpired, Heihachi decided to host the King of Iron Fist Tournament 4 to lure Kazuya in. Kazuya knew it was a trap but decided to go along with it, as he also has another motive in mind. Elsewhere in Australia, Jin Kazama, now with so much hatred in his heart for the Mishimas, trained in traditional karate instead of the Mishima fighting style, so that he would enter the tournament himself, not only to kill Heihachi for betraying him in the last game, but also kill Kazuya for giving him the devil gene in the first place.
Now, official sources say that Heihachi actually defeated Kazuya during Tekken 4, which would then lead him to a captured Jin Kazama. Personally, in my opinion, I think it would make a lot more sense that Kazuya actually defeated Heihachi during the tournament, because during the cutscene right before the match started, Kazuya was actually demanding to know the whereabouts of Jin Kazama, but then Heihachi responded back by saying that he'll say something right after the tournament ended. And eventually, when I won as Kazuya in his story mode, that's when Heihachi then yielded to Kazuya's demands about Jin's whereabouts. So I guess it makes more sense that Kazuya actually won the 4th tournament.
Inside Honmaru Temple, we see Jin bound by chains after he was captured during the tournament. Kazuya incapacitates Heihachi and proceeds to battle with Jin, the latter coming out victorious. Heihachi regains consciousness and starts his fight with Jin, only to also be defeated by him. Jin then grabs Heihachi by the neck as he's sprouting wings on his back, and just as Jin is about to go in for the kill, an image of June prevents him from committing that sin, thereby letting go of both Mishimas and tells them to thank her for the fact that they're still alive, as Jin flies off to the unknown. Tekken 4 now has arenas with interacting walls and obstacles for extra damage, although Dead or Alive 2 did it first. These hazards will allow players to juggle opponents for consecutive combos and implement a switch maneuver, which lets players escape from cornering and counter back. In addition to sidestepping, players can also continually moving sideways as you hold that direction after sidestepping. Only in Tekken 4 would you start positioning yourself at any time before the round starts. The characters move somewhat slower and fluidly than in Tekken Tag Tournament, as the designers would want to place focus on the playing field. Speaking of which, the new graphic system implemented in the game features increased lighting, dynamic physics, and smoother surfaces. Even the characters look smoother and detailed than the PS2 version of Tekken Tag. My favorite is when I select Jin in his hoodie outfit, as it's always been my favorite costume of choice. Also, the characters now have full voice acting. Sure, Julia's ending in Tekken 3 did it first, but as of Tekken 4, it has become the norm to have voices and some character interactions. Some of the usual modes return, and because the plot continues, story mode and arcade mode are now separate. Also making its return is Tekken Force mode, where you mow down waves of enemies in a beat-em-up setting en route to Heihachi in the 4th stage. The controls are the same as Tekken 3, only this time in an over-the-shoulder view, which can be somewhat disorienting. I much rather prefer the 2D view of Tekken Force over this one. Still, Tekken 4 is a nice game, and Namco will do all they can to keep refining its already smooth gameplay. And then 2004 came with the release of Tekken 5, which is actually one of my favorite games in the series. I remember during my high school years that I stumbled upon its cabinet during one of my visits to Katie Mills Mall and saw many people playing it. When I got around to playing it, I was hooked, and what made Tekken 5 stand out from past games would be two things. First is the inclusion of a player's card, which you can take your favorite character, customize your character with accessories, and save your character in the card to take with you to other arcades that would also house the same cabinet and fight other players. Second is the DualShock 2 port. When you're not comfortable of playing with a joystick, you can also bring your PS2 controller, plug it in, and play. Very cool cabinet design choice. Even its expansion, Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection, follows that same design. Now before I continue on with what Tekken 5 contains, let's look at the game's plot. Mere moments after Jin flies away at the end of Tekken 4, a squadron of helicopters from G Corporation deployed amounts of Jack 4 robots to assassinate not only Heihachi after Mishima Zaibatsu raided their organization, but also Kazuya, implying that they know about the dangers of the Devil Gene and needed to be killed. In a standoff, both Mishima father and son battle the Jacks together until Kazuya leaves Heihachi for dead while escaping. The Jacks hold down Heihachi while one activates its detonator, creating a huge explosion that seemingly kills Heihachi. The only witness to this event is a ninja codenamed Raven, who relays Heihachi's death to his superiors. Heihachi's death is declared all over the world, with everyone foreseeing the end of the Mishima Zaibatsu. But that's not the case, as somebody else takes over the company from the shadows and business continues as usual. 2 months has passed, and the King of Fire and Fist Tournament 5 is announced. Meanwhile, Jin is still plagued by the nightmares triggered by his Devil Gene and tries to end it by entering the tournament. His father, Kazuya, deduces that the Jack Force were sent by G Corporation to assassinate him and decides to enter the tournament to take revenge against whoever placed a hit on him. The secret sponsor of the tournament and owner of the Mishima Zaibatsu is finally revealed to be Jinpachi Mishima, the father of Heihachi, grandfather of Kazuya, and great-grandfather of Jin, who was confined below Honmaru by Heihachi after a coup d'etat 40 years prior, long before Tekken 1. However, upon his death, he was possessed by the devil entity who granted him insurmountable power, after which he broke out of Honmaru during the G Corporation's attacks. Jinpachi, realizing that his good side would fade away and his evil side would possess him soon, had announced a tournament in hopes that someone would be able to kill him before thoughts of world domination can surface. Jin makes it to the final round and faces his great-grandfather in a ferocious duel. In the end, Jin manages to kill Jinpachi, who dissolves into dust and disappears shortly after, with his wish being fulfilled. Jin, after defeating him, becomes the new head of Mishima Zaibatsu, but is unaware that Heihachi did survive the explosion and is working to retake the Zaibatsu after the explosion left him in a coma sometime during the tournament. I should say that Tekken 5 did have such an awesome intro, seeing the standoff taking place with the suspense of seeing Heihachi supposedly killed by the Jack Force squad, backed up by one of my favorite tracks in the entire franchise, followed by another intro showing all the characters with kick-butt music playing in the background, and the entire intro is nicely choreographed. The gameplay of Tekken 5 is Bandai Namco's way of returning to its roots by incorporating a faster, more fluid fighting system, improved graphics, more returning characters, and implementing stages with infinite spaces, which is what the first 3 games did. Speaking of stages, gone from Tekken 4 are stages with raised and lowered sections, and instead gone back to a very leveled playing field, though in some stages with walls, juggling your opponents onto them is still possible. Remember how Tekken 1 starts off with a minigame of Galaga? Well, Tekken 5 takes that tradition by opening the game with a short run of another arcade game called Starblade. It's an okay game, not as engaging as Galaga, though you can play the full game in its arcade history option. Also in this mode are the arcade emulated versions of the first 3 Tekken games. Not a bad addition considering the size of the disc itself, and they play exactly as they would be in the arcades. In addition to everything else, the one unique mode is the Tekken Force mode called Devil Within. This minigame follows Jin Kazama as he searches the G Corporation in search of information on Jun's whereabouts and how to rid himself of the Devil Gene. As the minigame implies, Jin is your only playable character. The game also uses a limited button system, incorporating a block and jump button, as well as sizing down the attack buttons to simple punch and kick buttons, though some of Jin's special moves can still be performed. Along with fighting various Jack Bottles and Grunts in the minigame, the players must pursue minor key quests to proceed. This mode is very average and it can be very repetitive, and more often than not, you would find yourself lost as all the stages are very labyrinthine in design, though I do love the first stage music, which is actually a remix of Jin's Tekken 3 theme. A year later, an updated version called Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection is released in arcades with 3 more characters, different versions of stages, and a rebalanced fighting engine. It was also released on the PSP in 2006, adding an ad hoc wireless game sharing for Wi-Fi online play, as well as the return of Tekken Bold mode from Tekken Tag. It was then released in 2007 for the PlayStation 3 as Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection Online, running at full 60 frames per second and supports 1080p resolution, although I do have this footage recorded in 720p due to the version of the Elgato that I'm using. I was having a great time playing this game online, but since many years have passed, I'm only able to record just parts of regular arcade mode, since there's hardly anybody playing online these days. Still, no matter which version I'm playing, Tekken 5 still holds a place in my heart as one of my favorite games in the franchise. In 2009, Bandai Namco will release Tekken 6 not only on the PlayStation 3 and PSP, but also on the Xbox 360. Yup, Tekken is going multi-platform.
And by the way, I am playing the 360 version over the PS3 version. Not because I don't like the PS3 version or anything, but because if I start playing the PS3 version now, that's when the trophy set will later appear on the menu, and the thing is, I doubt there's anybody who's playing online with Tekken 6 right now, so I really have no luck trying to find anybody else that would play against me online with that game just to fill up some trophies. Yeah, I'm still a trophy completionist.
Aside from the added features to Tekken 5, the 6th game has bigger stages with increased interactivity. In this case, taken from Dead or Alive 2 and onwards, new fighting arenas can be seen upon breaking certain walls or floors. And the customization feature has got a huge overhaul to where certain weapons that may seem cosmetic would actually become real weapons to be used in combat, though I never bothered doing so as there's no point in a game like this. New to the game is the Rage system. When a fighter's HP is down below a certain point, the fighter glows in a red aura, allowing for an increase in damage output. Also, characters have a few moves that when executed on a mid-air opponent during a juggle, you can cause your opponent to hit the floor so hard that it just became another cue for another mid-air juggle. Graphic-wise, it's smoother than Tekken 5 and its update, and the graphics engine has been designed with focus on character animation to make movements more realistic than its predecessors, which led to many animations being recreated for new possibilities of gameplay. Exclusive only to the console versions is a Tekken Force mode called Scenario Campaign. In this mode, the player can move freely in an environment similar to that of a third-person role-playing game. Players can also pick up weapons such as poles and Gatling guns, along with lootable items, money, and power-ups, which can be found inside crates that are scattered all throughout the playing environment. Players can move freely between fights, but when a group of enemies are encountered, the gameplay switches to a traditional two-dimensional Tekken style. This mode was originally only an offline single player, until a patch was released that allows online co-op for this mode. In my opinion, its execution is a step down from Devil Within, and instead tries to alternate between moving freely and then goes to a regular match during an encounter. Only many times you'll be isolated without so much as a crowd clearing move. However, this mode is the only way to know the full story. After Jin's victory in Tekken 5, he assumes control of the Mishima Saibatsu and declares war all over the world, resulting mass hysteria, including a random raid on a wedding, which earned the wrath of newcomer Miguel Rojo. Kazuya is now in control of the G Corporation upon killing the executives placing a hit on him, and now places a bounty on Jin's head. In retaliation, Jin proceeds to host the 6th tournament in order to lure Kazuya out. Meanwhile, another newcomer, Lars Alexanderson, and several Tekken Force soldiers rebelled against Jin's regime, but was rendered somewhat amnesiac after a G Corporation attack and is trying to recover his memories, all while accompanied by an android named Alisa Boskanovich, Dr. Boskanovich's creation in the image of his deceased daughter of the same name. We then learn that Lars is Heihachi's illegitimate son, who has been gone into hiding since Heihachi's supposed death by G Corporation and tried to take the Zaibatsu off of Jin's hands. After some fisticuffs with a berserk Alisa, Lars goes to Egypt, meeting an astrologist named Zafina, who provides them with information about the clash of two evil stars that will awaken a demon named Azazel, who is believed to be the one responsible for the advent of the Devil Gene and is currently chained deep within an ancient temple in Egypt. The two stars in question are said to be Kazuya and Jin. After all, since they both possess the Devil Gene. While in Egypt, Lars confronts Kazuya in front of the door that leads to Azazel's chamber and defeats him. Upon learning that Lars is actually his half-brother, Kazuya decides to withdraw and regroup. Lars and Raven enter the chamber and confronted Azazel, whom they seemingly defeat. It is then revealed by Jin that his reasons for his motives in the first place was to awaken Azazel and then kill him, in hopes that he would be free of the devil gene, as only another with the same power can kill him. I can understand he wanted to be free of his curse, but seriously, Jin, being a real jerk and causing a war against the world is not the way of going about it. Heck, you're basically an enemy of almost the entire world now. And what I mean by almost is that the only other person that still believes in you is Xiaoyu. Naturally, Jin defeats Azazel, Lars returns to Li Chaolan and a damaged Alisa, and the game ends with Jin's body being unearthed but still bearing the devil mark on his arm, concluding the fact that Azazel is not the real culprit behind the devil gene. So that's Tekken 6, still maintaining the fast and fluid gameplay as Tekken 5, better looking stages, and a very dark story. The music is not as memorable and engaging as Tekken 5, and if only scenario campaign isn't too long and tedious, I would appreciate the mode a little bit more. By 2012, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 is released to the masses. This is more of an overhaul of features from both Tekken Tag 1 and Tekken 6's gameplay. Counting the downloadable characters, the game sports 59 characters overall, that even Li Chaolan's alter ego from Tekken 4, Violet, is considered a separate character than a skin or palette swap. However, Gon remains absent as he's still a licensed character, and for some reason, Azazel is absent, which is strange. I know plot-wise that Azazel was destroyed in Tekken 6, but if Bandai Namco can put someone as massive as True Ogre in the game, why not Azazel? I would love to see the two giants clash. Kinda like seeing the movie King Kong vs. Godzilla. The movie may be old, but holy heck was it a good movie. Characters like Kunimitsu, Michelle Chang, and Combat make their return. There are also new characters such as Bob's slimmer form and Sebastian the Butler as playable characters. As for JC, it's just Julia Chang filling in for an injured wrestler bearing the same ring name. Much like the original, matches involve each player selecting two fighters to start with. Players are able to switch their fighters out at any time, allowing the inactive character to gradually recover some HP they may have lost. At certain points, an inactive character's HP bar may flash, giving them a temporary boost in strength if they are tagged in. If the HP bar of either of the player's fighters run out, that player loses the round. If time runs out, the player who has the most HP remaining amongst their fighters wins the round. When you start the game, you can choose to play as tag team or play it handicap solo style if you wish for a better challenge. Just like Tekken 6, there are stages that you can slam your opponent towards it and break it, sending your opponent and yourself to a new area to continue the fight. I'm sure nobody is playing this online right now, but I will say that I had no problem connecting with other players for matches online, as the netcode is actually really smooth. Okay, this may sound like a low blow, but what's up with the light show behind the character intros? This is Tekken, not WWE. Just a simple start of the stage would have just sufficed, and as great as this game is, there's really no reason to be that flashy. A new mode is added to the game called Fight Lab, which has its own subplot. Li Chaolan, assuming the Violet identity, is developing a new prototype of a new combat that is better than in Tekken 4. This combat goes through a 5-test simulation process, and it's from there that you can customize combat's moveset, which can affect it in the main game. Just like the introduction, every character's ending is all in CG, and the developers wasted no time on providing such nice choreography on the CG cutscenes and the gameplay itself. As with Tekken 5 and 6, I love the great use of graphics, lighting, and the stage effects to make fights look epic, even smoother than Tekken 6. As for music, I enjoyed it as much as I do with Tekken 3 and 5. Speaking of which, there's also an option called Tekken Tunes, where you can change the music of a specific stage to however you like it to be. I definitely enjoyed this title so much that it's actually one of the first few fighting games I actually went out of my way to get the Platinum Trophy. This is definitely one of the most solid fighters out there, and it's worth investing time and money over.
Now, Tekken would start off as basic as Virtua Fighter would be, but over time, the series would actually continue to improve upon its gameplay and content, making it one of the best 3D fighting games in the world today.
The series would continue to refine the graphics, gameplay, music, and its atmosphere to give a more realistic feel as you play through these games. Tekken will always have a place in my heart since playing it in the 90s.
So rather than giving a score for each of the games, I will give out my personal recommendations for any newcomers that are curious enough to try them out. And my personal recommendations are Tekken 3, Tekken 5, and Tekken Tag Tournament 1 and 2. Although I would gear towards 2 more so than 1. And if you're curious to play Tekken 1 and 2, despite how archaic they are, well, more power to you if you're curious. Once again, thank you all for your patience with this video. I hope you like what you see in this retrospective. I apologize again for taking too long with this, what with convention plans and work plans and all that jazz. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed all the content that I mentioned in this video. I hope to make another retrospective video of another series real soon. And I will say right now, we are not done with Tekken, folks. As I said earlier, I did say that I'm not including Tekken 7 in this retrospective video, as I will have that instead in a separate video. So, up next on the Musashi X Chronicles, we'll be taking a look at Tekken 7. I will be going through the mechanics as well as the whole story. And some moments that are kind of weird. Anyway, thank you all for watching this video. I hope you subscribe to my video. Hope you subscribe to my Facebook page as well. This has been Musashi X. I bid you all farewell. Take care, and stay tuned for the review of Tekken 7. See you around, folks.